Thank you. Good morning, members, and welcome to this meeting of Audit, Risk and Scrutiny. The meeting is being live streamed and recorded and will be made available for viewing through our council website. Remote participants, please follow the good practice guidance, which includes muting microphones and switching off your video when you're not addressing the meeting. Writing speak in the Teams chat function when you want to contribute. If you're in the hall, you can do this on your iPhone or iPad. Please don't repeat contributions already made by other members. No material should be posted in the chat function if it is intended as part of the discussion. Usual standing orders apply, including that any votes will be undertaken by roll call. If any member has to leave the meeting, please either leave the Teams meeting for that period of time or write leave in the Teams chat function and then join when you rejoin the meeting so we can keep track on whether the meeting is quorate. All members should speak clearly, taking their time and speaking directly into the microphone when making contributions. When referring to reports, please provide reference to the relevant page and paragraph to allow everyone to follow, and please focus contributions on areas where clarification is required or to propose an alternative to a recommendation. So moving on, could you please provide the Cedron and any apologies, please, Claire?
Thank you, Chair. Currently got 10 members present, 5 in the hall and 5 on Teams. The members present on Teams are Councillors Brodie, Jordan, Marsh, McGregor and McCammon. 5 members currently not present, being Councillors Juicy, Ingalls, Johnston, Scobie and Young. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Also, I would say that I approve of members' remote participation. Do we have any declarations? Sorry, apologies, Councillor John Campbell.
Thanks for letting me in, Chair. I think John Young is an apology. Thank you.
Thanks. Can we note that, Claire, please? Thank you. Thanks, John. So, declarations of interest. Do any members have any declarations of interest they wish to make? No? Okay. So we move on to the minute of the previous meeting of the 13th of June 2023. Are we happy to approve the minutes of that meeting? Okay, thank you. That takes us to item 4, which is the annual governance statement 2023-24, and we have Fraser Davis and Claire Rogerson here to assist if members have any questions. Is there anything you'd like to add to this before we proceed?
Nothing from me, Chair, but happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Fraser. So over to members. Any points or questions? Councillor Dryborough.
No points of question, Chair. I think the recommendations are as is. We have been going through this for a number of years since the outcome of the report. It does give a good timeline for the AGS to be agreed, and full council has an opportunity to discuss it as well. So just basically agree with the recommendations, Chair. It's covered everything that I think we've said in the past.
Thanks, Councillor Dryborough. Any other comments or points from members? No, I think with that we'll just agree with the recommendations. Thank you. Welcome, Councillor Johnson. No worries. So if we just focus on the meeting in hand, please, gentlemen. So we've got the annual complaints monitoring report. Gillian Ainsley's here to assist. Hello, Gillian. If members have any questions. So is there anything you'd like to add to this, Gillian, just now before we open it up?
Nothing to add, thank you, Chair.
Councillor Dryborough.
Thanks, Chair. And obviously it's a report that's after, again, a new system that's been put in place, and that's seen in the report itself. A bit concerned about the complaints outside the time limit. It's on indicators 3 and 4 on pages 32 and 35, respectively. The percentage numbers of, asking for further than 20 days is a bit high. But, I mean, as the system's relatively new, that doesn't mean our staff cannot answer the questions that are in them. Maybe the escalation for extension to delay response may be being used more frequently than actually needed. I'm sure there's a process in which the individual who's answering the complaint has to go through to ask for that extension. and you know, it'd be good to hear anything back from that. There's a lot of learning from complaints on page 36 onwards, and I'll ask how those are being measured. And while complaints have increased, so have compliments as well, which I'm pleased to see as well, but not by as much. And we, you know, we do get compliments at times as elected members, but what I've started doing is when I get a compliment from a member of staff, a member of the public, is I put that in an email to EMES for measuring. I don't know if any other elected members do as well, and if that's a way again of measuring that compliment side of things.
Thanks, Archie. Gillian, anything you can help with there?
Thank you, Chair. I think that the fact that we do have outside timescale within the stage 2 is something that we're trying to address, and making sure that the extensions are for a valid reason is something that we've put in place this year. It now has to go through the responsible manager, who is usually either a head of service or a director, for the reason. Quite often we see something like maybe the customer doesn't want to engage with us. If you can imagine, some of them are quite difficult, quite complex. They may not feel in a position to be able to reply within the quite tight timescale of 20 days. We also have the situation where the people that we need to speak to can be many and varied, and they might be on holiday. So, you know, it's making sure that we get a quality response rather than looking for it within the 20 days. So rather than rushing it and making sure we hit the time scale of 20 days, we're making sure that we get the right information back to the customer and that they're happy with that and that it doesn't escalate to the SPSO.
So when there is an escalation of time asked for, is the customer advised of that as well?
Absolutely, that's one of the requirements from the complaint handling procedure, that the customer always is updated and, you know, kept up to date as to when we should expect a response, why the reasons are that we're extending it. So yes, they are always kept up to date. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor John Campbell first, then Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Chair. Good morning, members. Yeah, I welcome this report, and we're being asked to approve the annual complaints monitoring report. I've had a good look through the monitoring report, but however, I am aware this is a historic report, you know, from April last year to March this year. But how do we capture complaints, you know, to schools, you know, especially if it only goes as far as the head teacher, for example? You know, how do we monitor that through the KPIs? You know, is there something in there that if there's a number of complaints that don't get any further than the head teacher, you know, could there be something systemic, for example? So I'm just wondering, while I'm quite happy to approve the monitoring report, how do we capture those kind of complaints when they come forward? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. Gillian?
Thank you, Chair. It is something that we work with education on at the moment. We're looking to make sure that we have a good relationship with them and that they're doing the right thing, they're answering at front line, but to make sure that it's recorded within our system on Lagan. It's at Respond at the moment, but to make sure that we then capture that data as well. It is something that's an ongoing situation that we have where we're talking with education, asking them to, I think across the board, it's not just education, there's a lot of people dealing at front line, which is the right thing for the customer, but it's making sure that they then do the next step and record it with us.
Yeah, I'm happy with that response, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Campbell. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. As well, I'm quite happy with the report and its format here. It's quite good. But my concern here is not a concern actually. It's just for a wee bit of reassurance, and it's on 4.5. You know, looking forward, and it's the integration into the new system. Will that have an impact on next year's report? Will it be a seamless shift, do you think? Because I do welcome the fact that we're actually going to be using similar systems across the council rather than have a lot of different systems that potentially each of them costs money and they maybe don't speak to each other. But do you think it will be a relatively seamless integration?
Thanks, Councillor Johnson. Gillian?
Thank you, Chair. That would be the vision, that it will be seamless. We have been working with Respond, who are our current suppliers, and we will obviously take all the data from that and then have it available to us so that we can run reports and make sure that these reports still have the correct information in. We're also working with Lagan at the moment to make sure that the reports will pull out the information we need. So although we'll be doing it from different systems, hopefully that shouldn't be noticeable, and we will be making sure that the same information can be captured. And in fact, what we're doing at the moment is making sure that more information will be captured on the new system. So we'll have the first 3 quarters on the old system and the last quarter will be on the new system. But we'll be able to hopefully do a bit more analysis going forward after the complaints report for 24-25.
Thank you. It's just, you know, you get, or I've got maybe a slight concern that when we're looking at this again in the future, that, you know, the next year's data and comparing it with the previous year's data so that it matches up, basically.
So just on that particular point, is there a way to retain, say, a sort of time window of the last 2 or 3 years' data until that transitions over, so you've got a full 3-year period in the new system? Is that the kind of thing you're meaning, Councillor Johnson?
Yeah, it's either that or the data is completely comparable, so that when we get 23, 24 figures, we can directly compare them to 22, 23, you know, rather than they've been, you know, because we get that with some reports sometimes, that this data has not been collected, and sometimes we get comparative figures, and it's quite difficult to match them up, you know, whereas it would be useful if they did correlate completely, because otherwise you don't know whether you're getting better or whether you're getting worse, basically.
Yeah, so for the purpose of like trend analysis, for example, so is that something that we can get that assurance, however it's either compatible or kept as legacy information so we can compare?
That is the aim that we have. We're looking to make sure that the information we take out of the old system, it will be for the previous 5 years. So we already have 4 years worth, so we'll make sure that the information we take out and then transfer over will be held so that we can compare like for like. And because we have set KPIs, we already know what they need to be for the new system, so they'll be set up immediately, and then the further analysis work will be what we would hope to bring more information to you in future years.
Thank you, Gillian, thank you. So Councillor Stevenson first, then Councillor Beretti.
Thank you, Chair, for letting me in. I see on page 32, complaints received by Directorate Education is 24%. I imagine over the past 24 hours that's going to rise quite considerably. Just to pick up on Councillor Campbell's point there, when I brought the violence in schools motion forward, there was a very, very stark difference between the figures reported from primary school to secondary school, and I worry that we aren't capturing that. So I'm content with this today, but I do worry that we just aren't capturing, or we're not encouraging those head teachers to actually present that data forward, and it then moves on and affects decisions we make politically. So I do hope in the next report that we see next year that those figures are much more robust. Thank you.
No, thank you, Councillor Stevenson. And just following on from that, I suppose, what will that data look like so that we're assured that if it's not dealt with at the front line, and even if it is, that we know the extent to which that's happened, and then if it's been escalated, and how's that going to be captured in future, or is that still being worked on?
I think it'd be fair to say that's still being worked on. That is part of the making sure that people tell us all the data that is there. They should be logging it on our system on Lagan. They should do that directly, and it's that encouragement to make sure that people feel comfortable with it, that they understand that it's a good thing to record things because we can learn from it, and then we can see the actual trends and things and see if there is a fundamental problem, as opposed to dealing with it individually at different school level. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair, for letting me back in. Just for clarity in my own head, when that has to be, if violence happened within the classroom, Is the teacher themselves able to report that, or does it have to go through the head teacher? Thank you.
Are you able to assist with that one?
Thanks, Chair. I do not deal with violence in school figures. No, that wouldn't be something that was a complaint. It would be something that was dealt with by health and safety.
Vlad, you look like poised, ready to come in to assist there.
Yeah, thank you, Convener. It's just to confirm that point, that that wouldn't be dealt with through the kind of complaints process. It would be more in terms of the day-to-day management and health and safety of that particular school, and how these incidents are then noted and reported within their own processes.
Okay, I don't know if that's I'm normally just called the chair, but I'll take convener, But okay, Councillor.
I'm set for next week.
Councillor Beretti.
I thought you were putting your hand up. Thank you, Chair. Gillian. Website information, and when is it going to be updated? Is it regular? But I was also, in recalling Councillor Johnson's, an addendum to that, the information that relates to the two forms of how this information is being gathered, will that be put into the website, so the trends, so that we can see, or public can see?
Yeah, thank you. So I think this relates to, I think the information on the website is from March, so there's maybe been a couple of quarters, if I understand you correctly, but yeah, if you're able to assist with that, Gillian, thanks.
Thank you, Chair. The website information is something that's new. The SPSO have a requirement that we publish the annual complaints report, which obviously shows the trend information. What we've been trying to do is publish the quarterly reports as well, so that the website is updated on a quarterly basis. It goes through the information management group first, and once they've approved it, then we should publish it. Apologies if it is only up till March at the moment. It should have had the next quarter on, and then we wouldn't publish the annual complaints report where everything's pulled together until it has obviously been through committee.
So just on that, does that satisfy your question? So we'd expect to see the upload to June, I suppose, and there'll obviously be, it's historical, so there'll be a lag as it goes through the process, presumably. So, okay, thank you. John Campbell again, Councillor.
Thanks, Chair, for letting me back in. Yeah, it's just basically on the back of what Councillor Beretti was talking about. I mean, the website is there for the public to see the number of complaints, and it's a good system. You know, once it's been updated, I'm sure the public will be very understanding. But just on the back of that, the chair and vice chair of communities would routinely get the KPIs, you know, brought to the business meeting with the director. Now, would this information, or could this information actually be passed to all 43 members? Because we're all very aware of the number of complaints in our own areas, our own wards, for example. So I'm just wondering if that's something that could be looked at in the future. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Campbell. I don't know if this might be a bit of a question for both Vlad and yourself, Gillian, but in terms of the, well, I'll let you come in first, and then Vlad can sort of follow up, I suppose, in support.
Thank you, Chair. I think in the first instance, the information is there. It's something that we can absolutely do. It would be the mechanism for getting it out to all 43 members that would possibly be an answer for Vlad.
Vlad?
And I'll stick to Chair this time. Yeah, thank you. I think that's it's a valid question. I think what I'll maybe just take an action for us to discuss within officers as to how that potentially could work. I think this is one that can maybe go through the Business Bureau in terms of reporting back through that process once we've had consideration on how that would actually work and the comms around it. So that, thank you for raising that, and yeah, we'll take that action if that's okay, Councillor Campbell.
Thanks, Vlad. Is that okay, Councillor Campbell?
That satisfies me. Yeah, I'm sure it'll satisfy all 43 members. It's probably the right thing to do, you know, if all members get sight of, you know, complaints as and when they're brought forward, etc. Thanks.
Excellent, thank you. So I don't have any other hands up in the room or online. So if we go to the recommendations and taking into account some of the actions and follow-ups, are we happy to approve the annual complaints monitoring report as detailed in the appendix and approve the publication of the report on the Council's website? Good. Thank you very much. Thanks, Gillian. That takes us on to item 6, which is internal audit reports. And we've got Richard Fox here to assist members with any questions. Richard, do you want to add anything to the report? I'll give you a minute to come forward, actually. Are you needing to change seat, or? If you feel safer there, that's fine.
Thank you, Chair. I've got nothing to add on this first report and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Richard. So over to members. Vice Chair first and then Councillor Campbell.
Yes, thanks, Chair. And I've got no issue with the recommendation of reports. However, on the second report on kinship carer on page 56, it starts with finding no issues identified from testing, but then it goes into recording an overpayment of 30k to a kinship carer over a 2-year period. Now, obviously, we need to make sure that we've got actions in place that will improve that situation. 30k is a lot of money to be overpaid over a 2-year period. And I think what you've got in the actions is a check will be done on all payments each month to ensure they're correct. Processes will be reviewed to see if further control improvement may be made. But this went on for 2 years, and I just need some confidence that we won't be in the same position again in a couple of years' time. 30k cheap, 30k worse off.
Thanks, Councillor Driver. And obviously this has come out in other sources very recently as well, so I don't know if you can assist with that, Richard.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, the reason for that statement is while we were doing the course of the audit, we have discussions with management going along, and they actually were doing their own checks of their own systems, which is how this overpayment was identified, which is why that statement was there. The most basic check that management have agreed and which we would like to see in place is that a list of the kinship care parents should go to the responsible social worker every month to be signed off. Social workers do know where every child is. They know who is caring for those children, and they are in the best position to simply look down the list of payments and confirm that those children are there. Now that measure is being put in place. We are also due to do a follow-up to yourselves in 6 months' time under our audit charter. We will check those arrangements have been put in place. This is actually an arrangement which is in place. If you look at the residential care report, Appendix 1, we will actually see that we confirm with the care providers that the elderly people are resident in the care home. So it is a routine control. We just want to see it in place for kinship care so it can't happen again. You're quite right, £30,000 is a lot of money. It's not in a great position to be in, but mistakes do happen. And the main objective from ourselves is to put controls in place so they don't happen again.
Councillor Driver.
I understand, that social workers will have the appropriate information in front of you. I just wonder if there's a responsibility on the kinship carer to advise, because it might happen during, a period of sort of not so much turmoil, but change in a child's life.
Absolutely, the onus is always on the responsibility of the person receiving a payment to declare changes of circumstances, whether that be for any type of benefit or payment. You'll notice one of the recommendations is recommendation 4, that we issue remittance advices so that there's absolute clarity that when you're receiving a payment from the council, you know exactly what it's for and why you're receiving it. And therefore there can be no ambiguity as to the nature of the payment being received.
Thank you, Richard. Councillor John Campbell.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I'm quite happy with the report. However, and I do recognise that further on in the agenda we've got follow-up on the internal audits, which we want to close off on previous items. I'm just wondering whether we should have a further recommendation added to this that we actually record it, that we will have these further or follow-up reports, you know, recorded as part of this particular agenda item, so that just in case if agenda item 8 ever falls off, you know, and it's never reported, or it might take a bit of time before we get that final report, but just to have that as a further recommendation, if that makes sense.
Thanks, Councillor Campbell. So I think, yeah, so effectively our audit charter does say that we'll get that 6-month follow-up, and it's maybe implicit, but it's not explicit. Maybe that's what you're kind of asking for. So I don't know if we would now be in the process of doing that anyway, and that item 8 is maybe an example of that. But I suppose for the assurance of members, maybe we just need to say yes, and we'll be doing that as part of the audit charter. So I'm happy to take members' view on that, but I mean, I don't know if you want to come back on that, Richard, for assistance.
As you said, it is in the audit charter, and you have my assurance you will be getting a report back on a follow-up on this audit. But if obviously it's up to you what you wish to minute as part of this committee.
Yeah, okay. I mean, we could even note that as part of the audit charter we'll receive a follow-up, so we're not over-agreeing it because we're getting it anyway, if you see what I mean. But I think, is that assurance enough for you? Do you want to record something in the minute?
It probably is, Chair. I mean, Councillor Driver has already raised an issue, you know, that, and we do have the action points in each of these appendices, and where things have been agreed and things are already in existing, sort of PIs, for example, blah, blah, blah. So even though we have these action points and we are being told that, you know, action is being taken, there's something 30 grand that's just slipped through the net. And, you know, it's just a case that we need to sort of double down on, you know, that after these action points have been put forward, that we do follow up and we do get a report back, and we might have got that 30 grand sorted out long before 2 years, I don't know, but just to have that on record. Thanks, Chair.
I mean, happy to do that if members are happy to do so. But I'll invite Councillor Johnson in first because you had a question, I think.
Thank you. I'll, if you don't mind, I'll just say, you know, on Councillor Campbell's point there as well. I mean, and if we're going to, as part of the audit charter, we get a report back in 6 months' time. Is that correct, Richard? Yeah. So, in which case, at the start of every one of these audits, we should be noting the audit charter. You know, I think it's potentially maybe a wee bit overkill, but there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, it's fine, but you know, it just doesn't really seem entirely necessary. But given that it is part of the audit charter, if you see what I mean, but it's fine either way. It was just about the £30,000 overpayment, and then we've got, well, it's not an overpayment, is it? It's an error, and then we've got 25,000 overpayment. So does that then make it a £55,000 of money that's disappeared, or is that or am I just reading that wrong?
Thank you, Chair. They're separate cases. The general approach within the council is to recover overpayments that we've made. This department has moved away from that general approach, and the action that's been agreed with management is that unless there's exceptional circumstances, we recover all debts. That 25,000 actually relates to 43 different cases. And the reason behind those 43 different cases, we make payments in advance. And if the placement should change within that period of a month, there's recovery, which we would normally expect to be recovered. So it's not so much a significant error that's led to those overpayments. But it's just a matter of routine that we should recover everything. So, but yes, you're right, there's the one reported in the first paragraph, and then there's been 43 other smaller debts, should we say, which as a matter of routine for the future we say should be recovered.
Councillor Johnson.
So what is the recovery rate like on these things? I mean, because I take it, I know these payments are being made, you know, to vulnerable people, and you know it probably is quite difficult to get the money back. Is that the case or not?
Recovering money in these circumstances can be difficult, and if I could actually, a slight distraction, if I could actually refer you to a paragraph in another report, which is actually the recovery of housing benefit, where I've referred to a level of £1.2 million outstanding. Now that £1.2 million isn't recent. That actually goes back many, many years. And the general principle has been that those debts are sitting on our books being recovered at maybe £100 a month. And the council's approach is that as long as we're actually receiving some money, it remains open to us and we will leave the debts on our books. So the general principle is it will not disappear. And if I may also refer to your own financial codes, if I may, that a debt over £10,000 to more than one individual can only be written off with the approval of Paul Garrett as Head of Finance Procurement and be reported individually to members of the Finance and Procurement Committee. So these things, it's not being treated lightly.
Hope that's helpful, Councillor Johnson.
That is quite helpful. It was just equally just to check my arithmetic when I saw the two different items.
I mean, I think in terms of the noting that we will receive a report back, I don't think it's something that we need to say on every item. I just think that if there's particular attention on a particular item, in the public interest, I think it doesn't hurt us to actually say, yeah, and just for belt and braces, we will expect to have a report back on this in 6 months' time as part of the audit charter. And for the sake of noting it, I think it demonstrates that we also want to pay that attention to particular issues, especially if it's been sort of highlighted in the public domain as well. So I don't know if that's if we're maybe happy to do that in this particular case, but by exception, if you like. Yep, if members are comfortable with that. Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, it's absolutely fine. Another thing that I might say is action tracker.
Yep, that's it. It's amazing the sort of in-jokes we have in the council, isn't it? But if we're happy to acknowledge the questions and scrutiny that's been carried out, but also then go to the recommendations, and effectively note, and we've obviously commented on the finalised audit reports, and agree or note, not Claire, what have we sort of decided that we will?
Okay, I've got an additional recommendation then. Note that 6 months follow-up reports will be presented to committee as part of the audit charter.
Okay. Happy with that, members? Good stuff, thank you. Okay, that takes us on to, thanks Richard, that takes us on to item 7, which is the revised format for the internal audit reports. And Richard is still here to assist members in any questions or comments about this report. So do you want to say a few words about this, Richard?
Thank you, Chair. The first thing to note is that this particular audit report has already been considered under the previous item. The purpose of this paper is to bring you a revised format. There were 3 significant changes. First of all, the objective is to make it more concise so we can highlight issues more easily. We're also, in response to members' comments at the previous meeting, we're trying to offer assurance in different areas. So we're breaking down each audit into controls assurances. And where we are able to give a good assurance, we'd like to be able to offer that. And the third key thing is to rank recommendations. And this is actually in line with the public sector internal audit standards that we're required to say whether a recommendation is very significant, moderate or a low recommendation. Because obviously as members we're aware that it's very easy to identify an extra control in cases where there's been a small error. But there has to be a balance at some stage between the cost of putting an extra control in place and the risk that you're actually solving. And we're trying to make that clear within our reports that those recommendations which should be followed up and are important to the control environment, and those recommendations which might have an improvement but aren't necessary to put in place. So that's the 3 changes. I'm happy if there's any suggestions to the format, but otherwise this is the format we would like to bring forward for future audit reports. Thank you.
I'll bring Councillor Driver in after Councillor Beretti.
First again. Yes, thank you, Richard. Yeah, Richard, that's it. Got it in one. Relates to that last comment you're making about the high, medium and low and the various degrees that you're assigning, but there's no timescales. And I'm a little bit confused as to exactly high priority, exactly how high is it, and is it 2-4 days? What's the metric? Medium, low. What are the metrics?
Richard.
Thank you. A high priority is something that will have almost certainly been discussed at senior management level before it will even reach this committee. So hopefully by the time a high priority recommendation comes here, I'm able to give you some progress. A medium recommendation we followed up as part of the audit charter after 6 months to ensure that it's been implemented. And a low recommendation may or may not be, it will be up to management discretion. Now, obviously, some of the actions we put in place take longer to implement than others, and it would depend on management timescales. But in response to your comment, I'm happy to put a column into the action plan actually giving a deadline or a timescale for when the actions were implemented. I can add that as a column to the format.
Yeah, thanks, Richard. I think that would be helpful just for total clarity. Thank you. Councillor Dryborough.
Thanks, Chair. I don't know if you could put this in the minutes. Woo! At long last, we've got a new format for I've been waiting for this for a couple of years. Thankfully, it's here now, and I think the action plan, looking at priorities and the key that's on page 74 would support a further improvement.
Okay, I don't know if we record that as a exclamation or an ejaculation, I'm not sure. Councillor Campbell, I think.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, just on the back of what Archie was saying, it looks so user-friendly. I wish a lot of our reports were like this, especially for the public. I mean, sometimes we tend to get bogged down as elected members. We understand council speak, but, just for the public's benefit, I think it's straightforward. So congratulations on bringing this way forward. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Campbell. Vlad, do you want to come in?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I particularly want to just thank the internal audit team and Richard in particular for driving that change forward, having heard loud and clear the feedback from members, and we'll continue to try and improve not only obviously that kind of internal audit function, but all the functions you've got in front of you today. So recognising of that, and also the feedback that we've received from members. I think all officers were in accordance with the points that were raised, and hence what you've got is that new style, which hopefully moving forward will tick all the boxes.
Absolutely. I'm sure the committee as a whole would agree with that, and it's a good piece of work. So a big improvement, and I don't want to compete with Archie's expression, but it's certainly, I mean, it's just so clear and logical. So by the time you get to the action plan, it sets out very clearly what exactly is happening to the assurance of members, I think. So well done, and we'll maybe tweak it as we go along, but a couple of comments to capture as well. So members evidently are happy beyond words with that. So if we're happy just to agree and endorse that as a way forward, I think. Okay, thanks, members. That takes us on to item 8, which is the follow-up of internal audit reports, and we're being invited to comment and participate in this. So again, Richard, do you want to speak to this?
Thank you, Chair. This is, as discussed earlier, it's our regular report in line with the audit charter, follow-up after 6 months. In these particular cases, there was good assurance offered in each of these 3 main financial systems. And so there is actually not a great deal to say. However, there's just one thing. We are in the process of moving away from looking at main financial systems every 3 years with member approval. Where we've got stable financial systems and they're well controlled, it may not be worthwhile always doing it. So the approach in future will be to keep regular discussions with management, and where there is a new system being put in place, or where we've got concerns, where we've identified concerns, then we'll do another audit, but it won't necessarily be in 3 years' time as we've previously done. Thank you.
Thanks, Richard. Any questions from members? Councillor John Campbell first.
Yeah, thanks. Just on Appendix 3 about the pensions administration. I mean, I'm quite happy to close these 3 for no further internal audit work. However, we've just been through our pensions, meeting the other day there, and there was talk about, you know, the review that was going to be brought up, and there was a lot of actions that was being proposed by Audit Scotland. So it was just a case that we look and take on board, you know, some of those actions. It doesn't take away from what the internal audit has done. However, you know, I would be keen to see these recommendations, you know, brought forward when we do the review. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Campbell. So, Richard, obviously, that Audit Scotland are there as external auditors. I don't know if you want to add a wee comment just about that, how we work with them, or in partnership with them, I suppose, in terms of carrying out the functions.
Thank you, Chair. Audit Scotland obviously have their own statutory function to sign off both the council's accounts and the pension fund accounts. They would ordinarily be following up their own recommendations. The relationship will be where we do internal audit work. We will share our working papers with them, and they're able to place reliance on our work where possible, which reduces the amount of work that they're required to do. There has been a recommendation in the Audit Scotland report that has recently been before members that internal audit reports on the pensions administration should be shared with the pensions subcommittee, which we accepted. The one exception to the 3-year rule is if the pension subcommittee would like an extra audit. That's part of the routine audit planning we can for discussions. So it might be the pensions administration subcommittee would like extra audit work. That's for further discussion.
Is that helpful, John?
Yeah, very helpful. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you. So, Councillor Beretti first, and then Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, I'm just processing what was last said there about pension subcommittee wanting more auditing, but no, just to agree with Councillor Campbell about Appendix 3 and my views from the pension subcommittee point of view. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Pension board. We have a pension board and pension sub, so obviously there's the two functions that they both carry out there. Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, this report here, you know, undertook a review of control arrangements. It's broadly in line with what Audit Scotland said, and a lot of the recommendations that have came through relating to governance of the pension scheme and actually regulatory change as well. It's not just that they've looked at it and decided we're inadequate in some way, because it's clearly not. And a lot of the recommendation, well, as you'll be no doubt well aware, Chair, as well, because if I remember rightly, you were in the meeting at the same time. So, and I do think that the internal audit report should be presented to the pension subcommittee. It actually raises a further question: should internal audit reports that relate to other service committees be presented to that committee as well? Food for thought.
Yeah, I suppose interesting, but well, Vlad, in terms of which committees reports go to, that's maybe one point to pick up, and then Richard, if you maybe have any other comments to add after that on Councillor Johnson's questions and points.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Chair. I think in terms of the reports that obviously come to this Audit, Risk and Scrutiny, they're carrying out a very specific function, and that's through that kind of internal audit function. Important to know that obviously these are published and all members have got access to that, and I think that's probably the appropriate route, that all members have got access to these reports. I don't know whether they're necessary for it to go to the service committee as well, because that's part and parcel of the reporting from that service in terms of each single one of those services. And they'll obviously be addressing some of the points that have been caught out or managed through the internal audit that's been carried out. So in essence, I'm not sure whether we need to do what I would call probably double reporting of the same thing in two different committees. The scrutiny and the main forum for that is here. It will be obviously a published paper, and also the service will have to take on board the actions that need to be carried out, and that I would expect to be through the service plans and everything else in terms of their own reporting through that process. Hopefully that partly answers it.
And any of the other points, Richard, I don't know if there was anything you wanted to come back on in terms of internal audit reports relating to pensions going to pensions, but again, that's maybe part of the same point. So,
Thank you, Chair. This was a recommendation from Audit Scotland in terms of the governance arrangements, which I was, for the sake of one committee, I'm happy to agree to, and because the pensions is actually a separate statutory body to the council, there's a reason, whereas it is, sorry, I'm over-speaking Vlad, who's head of governance here, but in general terms, a report that we do on education or social work comes to this committee as opposed to the main committee.
so does that help clarify, Councillor Johnson?
Yeah, it does clarify the matter. But equally, as part of routine reporting, I suppose, to service committees, as part of their performance reports, it should indicate actions being taken, potentially as a result of internal audit.
Okay, I don't see any other hands up online or in the room. So on the back of that then, we're happy then to note we've commented on the progress and then agree that no further reports are required on these subject areas. Okay, agreed. Thank you, members. So that takes us on to item 9, which is the scrutiny review timetable. And we have Fraser here to help with members who have any questions. I don't know if you want to say a few words, Fraser.
Nothing at the moment, Chair, but obviously happy to answer any questions come through.
Thank you. Councillor Driver.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I mean, the scrutiny reviews on additional support needs for school transport has been suggested several times over the last couple of years because of the costing of it, basically, which has been delayed, but it's needed. I would suggest, however, that the council plan theme within the actual situation should also be covered by communities, because it's community education asks for that additional support need transport, but communities actually pay for it. And I know there's been discussions ongoing about how that's actually paid for, but I think we need to be clear on how that's moving forward, and I'm not 100% sure I'm clear how that's moving forward. So it's a joint thing, I think, as opposed to just an education department thing, and perhaps some discussion between the two departments on how they take that forward for the review coming forward. The review on children additional sport needs and appropriate age in place. I think these reviews are with members of the Audit, Risk and Scrutiny Committee. I would agree the recommendations within the report, Chair, but I think we need to just think about that additional sport needs transport thing and how that actually comes forward in the scrutiny review.
Okay, thanks, Archie. Fraser, I mean, obviously there's a point there about, well, about how it works at the moment. I don't know if you want to pick up on that.
No, thanks, Chair, and thanks, Councillor Driver. As part of that review, we've got Douglas Kirkpatrick from Communities attending to obviously speak about that, and when we're discussing the financial arrangements, obviously that could potentially be, I wouldn't want to preempt members, but that could be something that you could recommend as a committee, looking at the kind of funding arrangements there and how it's done. But that's something we can absolutely look at as part of the workshops.
I know there's discussions ongoing between education and communities with regards to that, and perhaps, Jim, I don't know if you are aware of what the outcome of those discussions are at the moment, but I think it's important that we understand as elected members on the ERS where that goes, but happy with what was said.
Thanks. And Jim, welcome to the meeting. I noticed you coming in there, so I don't know if you maybe want to, if there's any comment you want to make on that particular point. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Driver. No, I've got nothing more to add to that. I think comments made by Fraser capture what needs to be said. Thank you, Chair. Thank
you. Councillor John Campbell.
Yeah, thanks, Archie. You just stole my thunder there. That was going to be my question. Yeah, no, I fully support what Councillor Driver was saying there. I was going to raise it under the objectives of the review in Appendix 1, when we're investigating all these other issues, that we do investigate that the budget holder happens to be communities, however the decision maker happens to be education and learning. So there's a wee bit of mismatch there, because we are talking about additional support needs transport, which is I wouldn't say it's school transport in what we call the normal terms, i.e. buses. You're talking about taxis taking individual children to school and back home. So, yeah, if Archie's proposed that, I'm happy to go along with that. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. I don't see any other questions up, but so I mean we've got a recommendation to make sure that we actually address that as part of the review. Is that something we can take on board?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll speak to the services to make sure that we kind of look at that together at the workshops. That's fine.
That's grand. So if that keeps members happy, then are we happy to agree that? I don't think there's anything else other than to consider and agree the proposed any amendments. So with that amendment, happy to do that? Okay. Good stuff. I think that concludes our business for today. So item 10 is any other business. I don't have any. And I've not been notified of anything. So that's it. Have a good day. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Chair.